Let's have a look at the relevance of the industrial sector for Europe and Germany. What you see on this chart is the share of different economical sectors, agriculture, industry and services, for the gross domestic product, GDP for short, in the European Union over time. What you see is the very small bar for agriculture at the bottom. It hardly contributes to our GDP. This is not to say that it's not important that we have agriculture in the European Union and in Germany, but that it only contributes little to the GDP. What you see with the light blue bar is a very sizable part of the industrial sector, the secondary sector as we also call it. And then you see that the European economy is primarily a service economy. About 2/3 of the economy are services. And the differences over time are basically rounding differences, so there's hardly any time trend to see here. Now, while this was a time trend for the European Union, let's look at an international comparison. What you see on this chart is Germany, China, France, UK, India, Japan, Russia, and the United States, and their relative shares of agriculture, industry, and services. What you see for Germany is a picture pretty similar to what we've seen on the previous slide to the United States. You can hardly see agriculture, it's primarily services, but still if you look at the industrial sector, then it's substantially more pronounced in Germany than on average in the European Union. You can understand why this is if you look at France and the UK, which was in the European Union for most of the timeline on the previous chart. And France and the UK have substantially smaller portion of the industrial sector. Japan is about comparable to Germany, so is Russia. With Russia, you see the more pronounced agricultural sector, and especially in India and China, you see a more pronounced agricultural sector. And if you look to China, then the industrial sector there is strongest in comparison of these countries. So due to the very different national conditions, different resources, different levels of development, the economic sectors have clearly different impacts on the GDP in these different countries. Let's narrow down a little on Germany and compare the different sectors. The primary agriculture, secondary industrial sector, tertiary sector, also called the service sector. What you see on this chart is always two bars, one for the gross value added by the respective sector, the other for the workforce. Again, you see the primary sector, agriculture, being hardly visible in these statistics, yet important for our overall economy. And for the secondary sector, you see that gross value added outweighs the workforce. For the tertiary sector, for the service sector, it's the other way around. The workforce is stronger than gross value added. What makes for this difference? What is your perspective? What do you think? Why is there an imbalance between gross value and workforce between the secondary and the tertiary sector? Now, all statistics I've shown you so far are relative statistics to the overall economy, share of GDP or share of workforce. Let's look at the absolute numbers. What you see on this slide is a timeline for Germany starting in 1991. Again, these three sectors, agriculture, industry, services. And what you see here is that the industry sector is growing, as is the service sector, as is the agricultural sector. All sectors of our economy is growing. But the service sector is growing quickest, industry second quickest, agriculture slowest. And as the largest share of our economy, the service sector, is growing quickest, it's gaining in a relative share. So we are not only in a service economy, we are in an increasingly strong service economy. But that doesn't mean that industry is declining. It means that industry is growing slower than the services sector. Now let's look at what Industry 4.0 contributes to this growth of the industrial sector. For that, let's remember the 1.9% historic year-to-year growth of the industrial sector, of the GDP of the industrial sector. What you see here is data from a study by Bitkom and Fraunhofer ERO, where they estimated the value equation, the additional value equation, by applying Industry 4.0 in Germany. And they compare the year 2013 to the year 2025. And you see a breakdown by 5 selected industry sectors. So this is not all of the industrial sector, but 5 selected sectors. So the IT sector, machinery, automotive, electronics, and chemicals. And what you see is overall for these 5 sectors, but pretty much also for each individual of them, the estimate by Bitkom and Fraunhofer was that it's about a 1.7% 5% annual growth of value added in these industrial sectors from applying Industry 4.0. Compare that to the 1.9% historic growth of the industrial sector which we saw on the previous slide. What does this tell us? This tells us that the estimate here says that either we need Industry 4.0 to sustain our growth level, or you could put it the other way around, that Industry 4.0 would double the growth of the industrial sector. 1.7% per year doesn't sound like much, but comparing it with this historic growth of the industrial sector, it shows you that Industry 4.0 is an important part for keeping our competitiveness, for being able to further grow our industrial sector.